Welcome to Startup Health TV. This is where we celebrate the entrepreneurs and innovators who are transforming health. I'm your host, Logan Plaster. It's my pleasure to be here today with Robin Roberts from DaDosX and Stephen Lindsay from Banner Health. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Robin, let's start with you. You have built this company, DaDosX, and you're helping to validate other health innovation companies, which I think is an interesting position for you to be in here at this conference and in a community of startups. How did you get into this, and tell us what you've built?
Great. So, the reality of it is, it all started off with a problem that we noticed while we were working at Novartis, where Novartis was having a very difficult time testing or understanding how well a digital health technology would work in a specific use case. So we only had really a couple of options at that point in time. The option was, one was to test it in conjunction with a clinical study, which is extremely expensive and very, very time consuming. We're talking in the millions anytime you're doing any type of change, protocol amendment to a clinical study, and we're talking years at times because you're at the mercy of the clinical trial timeline. And the other option was just not to do any study whatsoever and just really guess. And the vast majority of the time, what we did was guess. We just said, look, we don't have the ability to collect this data. We know we want to use this digital health technology in this particular use case that is a little bit different than the use case it's normally used in. We know that this company, which in often cases was a small company, but sometimes was a large company, doesn't have the data that says it works in this particular use case, but we're just going to take a wild guess and say whether it works and it's something we should really lean into and potentially put millions of dollars into it, or whether it's something that doesn't work and we need to pivot away from it. And often we chose wrong. Yeah. And so we needed to develop a way to be able to test it in a time-efficient and cost-efficient manner.
What was your eureka moment, your light bulb moment where you realized we can do better?
Okay. It's a great question. Well, sitting in conference rooms over and over again with clinical teams, with marketing teams, and with other teams, trying to solve the same problem over and over again. It was one of those times where I think we all said to ourselves, we have to be able to do better. We're an industry of scientists. We're an industry of data-driven individuals. Why are we not utilizing data to make the decision around what technologies we put in front of patients and in front of healthcare providers, instead of just guessing and assuming that we know best as to what's going to work or what's not going to work?
Okay. All right, well, that's a good lead into exactly what you've built, and then we'll get into, Stephen, kind of what you saw and what they were doing at Banner.
Great. So what we've built is really a consortium of healthcare systems that we've partnered with, like Banner Health, all leading healthcare systems across the U.S. that give us the ability to be able to test these solutions in a cost-effective and time-effective way. Simply put, it is exactly that. Now, the process is much more complicated. It involves many other pieces that need to be in place in order for the value proposition to make sense for all parties involved. But we were able to refine that as during our time under Novartis, and now as a separate organization, as a new company, we're able to leverage that experience, that expertise, and really scale this up so that the rest of the industry is really able to utilize it.
Now, Stephen, it's interesting to have you here in the interview because normally I'm just interviewing the founder, and yet you had the experience, 3 years ago? When did you first meet, Robin?
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
3 years ago, of hearing the pitch and thinking, will this work for my organization? So talk to me about that experience, hearing the founder pitch and processing the value proposition for you.
Yeah, so as part of the innovation group, so I lead our innovation partnerships team. We're very focused on kind of that external face of the organization when it comes to opportunities to bring in startups, small companies, big companies, all kinds of different organizations. And one of the use cases that we've seen, and one of the spaces that we try to build out our innovation team around, is looking at different ways that we can embrace technology and different ways that we can test things. Maybe they're not the thing that we want to necessarily ultimately land on. This is the thing we want, but it's going to help inform us of what we could be doing or what we should be doing in the future. When Robin came and talked to us, one of the first things that really kind of sparked my interest was that we were in the similar boat of anything we want to do that's kind of relationship or research driven, then suddenly becomes a clinical trial or becomes massive amounts of paperwork and legal and we're a big health system. We don't move real quick
Yeah.
when it comes to things. And so the opportunity for us to go in and test unproven novel ideas and approaches to things in a way that wasn't a true clinical trial, and that Robin's team could help us navigate a lot of that space and even basically just create the structure for us. We could come in and say, here's the two or three things we need to tweak to make it work for us.
Okay.
Was great. That was kind of the selling point, and the rest is history.
So you needed to get around the same barriers of time and money that you had come up against, which leads us to the more tactical question of how do you validate an innovation without going through a full clinical trial?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that many of the data sets that are needed, the validation data that's required, doesn't need to go through a full clinical trial. Now, I want to be really clear, in many of our trials, we need to obtain IRB approval, we need to do a lot of the things that contain that robust nature of what you would find in a clinical trial, but it doesn't need to be a clinical trial in the sense of it being a phase 3 clinical trial, for example, where it's thousands of patients. There are times where that's needed, but in most cases for digital health technologies, it's not what's needed. What's needed is a simple test that says, this is how well this works in this particular use case. A fantastic example is a study that we did with Banner Health, where we were looking at a specific wearable to be used in a different use case than it was previously used. We wanted to utilize it in the oncology space, where it was before that being utilized in a different space. What we didn't know very well was how are patients going to react to that. The patients in this particular therapeutic area, in this particular space, are different. Oncology patients are different than other patients, and other patients are different than other patients, right? So we didn't want to guess and say, well, they'll react just like patients in the cardiovascular space or in some other space. We wanted to actually understand how well it worked, and that required a small test that where we collected data from several dozen patients, and we better understood how patients react to that particular wearable, how healthcare providers react to utilizing that wearable. And that's the kind of information that an organization needs very often to be able to partner with a digital health technology to get them over that hump. This is a problem that almost every digital health technology out there faces at some point in time, whether they're facing it now or whether they've overcome it in the past and are going to face it in the future. Every organization that wants to utilize the digital health technology wants one of two things. Either they want to use it in a very different or somewhat different use case, or they need more data around the use case that it was initially intended for in order to be able to make a real decision around whether it's something they want to lean into or whether it's something they need to pivot away from.
Interesting. Stephen, we talk to a lot of our founders about the power of collaborative partnerships that you represent here. And so I'm curious if you can elaborate on kind of how the working relationship has evolved over the last 3 years and how the partnership itself has shaped DatosX, which you can speak to as well.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and just kind of piggyback on what Robin was just saying around that study, that was the point that opened my eyes to really the value that we could gain as a partner. We as a health system, we have patients, we have doctors, we have hospitals, we have clinics, we have all these things that, like Rob was saying, startups don't have access to, digital health companies don't have access to. We also have access to a lot of data and insights and things that are valuable to those organizations. And how do we actually maximize that from a partnership perspective? As a healthcare provider, Banner's probably not going to get out of the space to start building wearables.
Yeah.
It's just not really our space. But we can provide help in those areas to be able to drive those wearables and show these health systems this many people may or may not wear this because it itched, right? Made me itch, maybe whatever. Those are the kind of things that we can provide that not everybody has necessarily. So I think as we worked through that process and as we were talking through other opportunities to explore, a lot of it was just that. It was, how can I look at this from a perspective that isn't maybe necessarily traditional clinical trial research, but is a way that we can bring in a different view to this test that can still benefit those startups and those digital health companies to be able to say, oh, that's actually a reason maybe we shouldn't do this because people aren't going to wear it, right? So that's the kind of, I think to me, that's what really shaped the view and the vision that we're taking this together on.
And I think for us, what it allowed us to do, those initial projects that we did with Banner Health and with a couple of other large healthcare systems, it allowed us to refine the process. the good thing about DatasX is that we're not a new organization that has figured out a new process that hopes it can fit in the marketplace and hopes that it works so that we can scale it. We've gone through that tough process of figuring out how is it going to work best for the healthcare systems that we partner with, how is it going to work best for the life science companies that we're working with, or for the digital health tech companies that we're working with. The value proposition was key in order to make sure that all of those partners not only remain engaged, but get something productive out of that engagement. And that's what keeps the process moving very efficiently, that's what keeps costs down, and that's what keeps us time efficient.
So what's next? Where are you growing next? What kind of traction and what milestones are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so we're launching the company tomorrow, actually.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're coming out of stealth mode and launching the company tomorrow. We've already got over a dozen projects that are in our pipeline and ready to be launched. We've actually just wrapped up a project with a major healthcare system in California, and we're looking to continue not just launching new projects, but growing our partnership with different healthcare systems. So we're actively working with and talking to other healthcare systems. We have over a dozen healthcare systems that we have now on board, but we're constantly growing that list. And we're working with large leading healthcare systems like Banner, but we're also working with regional healthcare systems and sometimes even smaller healthcare systems that may have access to patients that others may not. So, for example, rare disease patients, patients of that sort. That is something that we are very, very focused on. The future we want to build for this company is one where any organization comes to us and says, hey, we have problem X that we need to solve, and we need data to understand how well it works. We need the validation data to understand how much of a decision we should take in leaning into this or pivoting away from it. And we have the ability to actually deliver on it because we have the partnerships in place that give us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. How much did your time at the Novartis Biome kind of shape this trajectory?
Considerably. So at the Biome, we launched the Biome. I was the co-founder and chief operating officer of the Biome. We launched the Biome in 2018. Initially, we did not have the evidence lab, is what the organization was called, in place at that time. But we knew that the evidence lab was something that was going to have to be built, because what we put into place was an innovation process that clearly stated what needs to be done in order for you to go from just being, let's say, working with a company to actually partnering with that company. And by that company, I mean a digital health tech company. And one of the key things that we needed to do was to be able to test that solution in a very time and cost efficient way. We didn't know exactly how we were going to do it, but then after a couple of years, we realized that this was going to be the best way to do it, and then we built that out and we refined it, and now we have spun it out and now have DatasX.
Nice. Stephen, I'm going to put you on the spot a second here because I can tell you guys have a good working relationship, and we talk a lot with our founders just about how it's really the people, it's the team that is going to go the distance, even more than having the perfect product market fit. So what is it in Robin that you saw that you think can sort of carry DatasX the distance?
So first of all, I think on a personal level, Robin and I are just the same, right? We both kind of have that a little bit laid back, but we need to go. So that's one piece. I think the other side of it that I really appreciate in Robin is that he's got that drive. He's constantly, he and I think, are on multiple text threads a week, just talking through like, hey, what about this idea? What do you think about this? How can we maybe work on this? And so it's, he's got that mentality that really drives and tells me, as a new company, I'm comfortable knowing that he's continuing to try to figure out new ways to grow this thing and new ways to figure out how we can continue to grow that partnership together, but also so that he's branching out. And I know at some point, I'm hoping maybe even some point be able that I'm going to turn around and call him and be like, hey, we're trying to solve this problem. Can you help me find something out there that's going to do this for me?
And final question for you. You have an interesting sort of macro view of the market since you're thinking about how to validate different types of solutions. And we work with hundreds of founders in startup health. Any advice for a founder who's watching this, who's thinking about validating their own solution and thinking about the process? Any advice about how to just think through that kind of challenge?
Yeah, great question. So it's really interesting because prior to the development of this process and the launch of DatasX, this was just a problem that was baked into the cake. It was just a problem that you, as a digital health tech company, had to deal with. You knew that if the situation came up where you needed more data to make a decision, for a partnership to be spurred on, for you to enter a different part of the market, you were either going to have to come up with a ton of money and a ton of time to be able to do that, or you were going to have to hope for the best and hope that someone would take a leap of faith. But now that is something that you can solve. You can actively solve by contacting us and working with the broader team. The reason why we're successful at what we do is because we have a team that has the experience to be able to do that. Not just the technical know-how, which is important, but the experience in having done it previously. My fellow co-founder, Dr. Marianne Wilwima, was a member of the Biome as well prior to coming into DaTosX, and is just one of several team members that we've brought over from the Evidence Lab into DaTosX, because we knew that legacy knowledge was going to be critical in us being able to really scale this up so that it's something that solves a problem for the broader industry, and not just nitpicking or picking random projects here and there where we might be able to have impact.
Very interesting. Rob and Stephen, thank you for taking the time with me, and I appreciate you also putting your partnership on display so we can see how this works in real life and you're helping real patients. So thank you, and I wish you the best.
Thanks so
Thank you very much.
All right.